Yeah, I think you do enjoy this. I think you love this.
So welcome everyone to Queer Happened Here. Yay! Give it up. With our author, Marc Zinaman, and photographer, Ande Whyland. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division. The Bureau is an all-volunteer independent queer bookstore that my partner Donnie Jochum and I founded in 2012, and that's been here at the LGBT Community Center since 2014. And tonight we're being helped by Ryan Warden, one of our longtime volunteers. Thank you, Ryan. The Bureau, as an all-volunteer organization, depends on sales and donations to keep this machine going. And in these, how shall I say delicately, difficult times, we need all the help we can get. So we especially encourage donations if you know you won't be buying a book. So I'll pass the bag around. And there's some change in here. There's also a QR code if you'd like to give through Venmo. Anyone watching online who would like to make a donation on Venmo can do so at BGSQD. So I'll pass that around. If you're not already on our email list, you can sign up for that at the back of the room or on our website, bgsqd.com. And you'll get a newsletter every other Monday about our many upcoming events. And we are in high season, so if you check out our calendar, you'll see quite a lot coming up. Our regular business hours are Wednesdays through Sundays from 1 to 7 p.m. And then we often stay open later for events such as this. So before I introduce Marc and Ande, I wanted to read a land acknowledgement. Pretty much I've memorized, but I like to have my notes. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. And you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. The Bureau also recognizes Palestinian liberation as a fundamental part of our collective liberation, and we encourage you to read our flyer on why we feel it is important for queer people especially to speak out at this particular moment in solidarity with Palestinians. So, I have my notes, here we are. Marc Zinaman is a New York City-based writer and historian. Since 2021, he has been running the social media account Queer Happened Here, which maps the forgotten LGBTQ+ history of the city. He has also been a contributing writer for the NYC LGBT Historic Sites Project and Making Queer History website. He was the contributing editor of the book Getting In, NYC Club Flyers from the Gay 1990s, which we have somewhere over there, and currently serves on the planning committee for the forthcoming American LGBTQ+ Museum, which, do we know when that's coming?
Hopefully soon.
Stay tuned.
2 years.
When artist-photographer Ande Whyland moved to the East Village in 1980, it was like Alice falling down the rabbit hole. She landed in Club 57, a now legendary performance gallery space that was a headquarters of the astounding East Village art explosion of the 1980s. Ande's candid photos made her a vital new member of this exclusive underground enclave. It also gave her inside access to other venues that fostered the burgeoning party-fueled scene, including the Pyramid Club, Area, Jackie 60, Wigstock, the Mermaid Parade, Easter Parade, and Slipper Room, to name a few. These photos have been published in numerous books and magazines, including 2 separate issues of Art Forum, a full page in the Whitney Museum of Art catalog, The American Century, 1950 to 2000. 4 photographs were chosen for the East Village USA show at the New Museum and an extensive slideshow for the Club 57 exhibition at MoMA. Her book Shots, 1980 to 1986, captures this period with writings by those whose photos are featured in the book, and we have copies of that. And her latest book, Balloons and Feathers, out last year, captures the burlesque stars from the early 2000s, also in their own words. Both books are available on Blurb and available here tonight. And both of our authors will be happy to sign books after the event if you'd like to purchase one. And that is it from me. I'm going to turn the show over to you, and we're going to start some slides going, so you'll have some visual entertainment. Please give them a very warm welcome.
Okay, and I think leave it up there.
Leave it?
Because
Okay.
so I can just figure it out in here. Okay, all right. So,
Well, I'll just say thank you to the Bureau for having us and to Village Preservation as well. And I just want to say thank you to Christelle, the publisher, and the editor, Ali, who is here, Ali Gitlow, and the designers of the book, John Philip Sage and Assad Parvaiz, who I think are also here. And thank you all for being here as well.
okay, I agree. So, so I guess to start this, I had never met Marc before, and I'd seen the post constantly, you know, on Instagram and different places, and then he called me to get some pictures for the book, and we talked about the pictures, and you know, and that was about it. And then finally, the last time that I spoke with him, I said, "How old are you?" Because I had no idea. I just figured he knew everything about all the different clubs and everything, and it turned out that he was really young. And when I was going to these clubs, he was just kind of bored, I guess. So how exactly you got into it, you know?
Yeah, no, that's
Okay.
a good point. Thank you for revealing my age. So I was born in 1990, but I was born in New York City. I grew up in New York City, so I'm a native New Yorker. And, you know, I think we're not really taught queer history, and so how do you learn queer history? You have to kind of teach it to yourself, or you learn it from, you know, other queer elders. And so I don't think I had really learned about New York City's queer history until I just started reading about it or, you know, watching films for myself. And so this all kind of started for me after I had watched 2 Studio 54 documentaries back to back. And, you know, everyone knows a lot about Studio 54, but there were all these mentions of kind of other clubs I had never heard of. Some were, you know, there was Crisco Disco, which was this sort of underground club in the 70s and 80s that had this giant Crisco can as a DJ booth. And there was Gigi's Barnum Room, which, you know, had these transgender trapeze artists doing acrobatics above the dance floor. And so I had never heard of them, and they just sounded insane to me. And so I started to just kind of look them up online and read about them. And that turned into kind of this rabbit holing of, you know, 70s places, but then it bled into the 80s. So there was, you know, Danceteria and Mud Club, Club 57, which we'll talk about. And so I started just, you know, making a Google map for myself and putting them on a map and, you know, compiling photos and whatever text I could find. And then, you know, that was really just my own interest. And then the pandemic hit, and I sort of kept doing that every day, and it became this daily ritual. And I had, you know, thousands of places one day, and I was like, what do I do with this? And I started talking to other queer people my age, and, you know, they also had not heard of Gigi's Barnum Room or Crisco Disco or Mud Club. And so it was more just about, okay, let me start putting this into some kind of digital archive where I can share with friends. But it also led to sort of wanting to connect with other people who had photos like Ande, who had been there, who had stories. And so I also started doing oral histories and, you know, interviewing people who had been there, because, you know, a lot of times places did not have photos or did not have, you know, a New York Times article written about the Crisco Disco. They were sort of underground and meant to be. So it sort of felt like, you know, learning about these places from the people who went there, from the people who performed there, from the people who spun there was going to be the best option. And so, you know, Ande was one of those people who had been at Club 57 and Pyramid, and so it was important for me to connect with her. And, you know, I'd seen some of her photos online, and that's how we sort of found one another.
Right.
And I guess, yeah, maybe you could tell me kind of How did you get to New York City? Or what is your origin story here?
Well, I'm mostly from New York, so, but I did move to San Francisco out of high school and, a little bit after high school. And, I always had that fantasy, I'll have an apartment in Manhattan, everybody has that fantasy, I think, of the world. So, I came back and, I had places to stay at least while I found a place. And I found a really cheap apartment and, in those days they were hard to find, but when you did find them, they were pretty cheap. It was just getting one was the hard part.
How much was it and where was it?
It was on West 11th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue, and it was a 5-floor walk up, and it was a tiny room with a giant skylight and no windows, and it was a shared bathroom, and it was $160.
Okay.
And then the next.
And what year was that?
That was like probably 80 or 1979, I think 1979. And then the next one after that was on 10th Street between 1st and 2nd, which was a scary building with scary drug dealers and stuff outside. But it was a bigger apartment and it was in the East Village, which I kind of wanted, and it was on 135. Which was unusually low even for them, but that's what it was. It was pretty much
I think when I lived in the East Village, I was paying that maybe for just the internet.
True. So that made a huge difference for all of us during that time because we were all living in this really cheap rent world, and so we could pretty much do whatever we wanted. I mean, as long as you had a part-time job, you could pay the rent, so we would go to Club 57 every night, so that's where it started for me.
Yeah, so tell me about how did you come across Club 57?
I kind of knew about it, and when they had the New Wave Vaudeville show, which is somewhat famous, I guess, in certain crowds anyways, they were going around, it was David McDermott was going around, they had like a convertible, like probably a Volkswagen or something, they were grounding it with his microphone announcing the show, come to the show, it was at Irving Plaza. So, which was connected with Club 57, but I didn't know at the time. So I went to this show and didn't think much about Club 57 until I moved to the East Village. And then my neighbors, I met some neighbors who was doing a fashion show. And so that's how I started. So I was in the fashion show and Dani was the DJ and that's how we met.
Yes, we have a special guest here,
Dani Johnson. She was the DJ.
Who was the DJ at Club 57.
And the Pyramid and multiple. And the Boy Bar.
And Area. And the Boy Bar.
So can you tell people a little bit, for those who don't know, a bit about Club 57? Like what were some memorable nights or stories?
Well, there's so many. I mean, it was the basement of a church. And so you could pretty much get away with having liquor and everything because it's part of a church. Churches are allowed to, like the way they're allowed to have gambling, they're allowed to have liquor. And they called it a private club, so it was like, I don't know how much it was, like $5 or $1 to get a membership card.
It was $3 for membership
$3.
and $1 admission
Okay.
if you were a member, and it was $2 if not.
Okay, so Ann Magnuson was the manager and who booked most of the events that happened. And every night was something amazing. I mean, I don't even know what to say. There was like in the book, the putt-putt, what was it? The
Putt-putt reggae,
which is a picture of Dani on
it was
the
like
Club 57
a-
page in Marc's book.
It was like mini golf meets like Jamaican shantytown, I think, or something. I wasn't
I
there,
can
so.
explain what that
Please
was.
do, because it's in
Should
the
I-
book, so.
Should I? Okay, I'm gonna explain what that was.
We should
And
show the picture.
Also, okay, listen.
Let's take a-
All right, I did not like set out to put a mop on my head, all right? I mean, it was closer to me than the lampshade. So this particular night was, because we used to have this thing called the Ladies Auxiliary, which was a meeting at Ann Magnuson's house. And the girls would get together and decide, what are we gonna do at Club 57 next month? One person said, I want a putt-putt night. And someone else said, I just got off, Naomi Riegelsson, who was DJ at Irving Plaza and also on NYU radio, said, I just bought all these reggae records, I want to play them. So Anne decided to combine the two, and we made a putt-putt course out of garbage. And maybe about 3 people came. And I was behind the bar and I poured myself a bunch of gin and tonics. And eventually, when it was time for a photo, I put that mop on my head and looked like a fool, but it's been memorialized. Okay, so that's enough of that.
So, so Wendy Wild, does anybody know who Wendy Wild is by any chance? Yeah. There's a picture of her. Yeah. When Wendy Wild comes up, anyway, so Wendy Wild, who's no longer with us, well, I guess to some degree, we were maybe a clique or maybe a crowd, but we all kind of knew each other. We were all the same ones that would come all the time. We were there every night, pretty much. And Wendy Wild decided to do a John Waters' Desperate Living Mortville. Does anybody know what that is? Okay, so, and Mortville was in Desperate Living, and it was like a camp of crazy people, right? That had a leader.
Again, it's garbage.
Who was the lead? Divine was the lead, was it Divine?
No, it's Edie Massey.
Oh, Edie Massey was the leader of Mortville, which was this,
Yeah.
and like, we do things like, okay, part of Mortville, she decided today's gonna be Walk Backwards Day. It was just like really silly, right? So, so that was like one of the nights, just something
Like
idea.
the Marc Shaman and Scott Whitman shows.
And, well, then there were multiple, you know who Marc Shaman and Scott Whitman, they're like pretty famous these days, they like do a lot of music for movies, and they did, big productions actually for Club
Yeah.
57, which was usually pretty small ones, but they did, what did they do, the
Sound of
Music,
Living Dolls.
Living Dolls, which is
Was
Takeoff on Barbie. I guess the Sound of Music was the most famous, biggest one, right? And Holly Woodlawn was in that.
Yeah, so just to
Yeah.
clarify, like, for those who don't know, Club 57, or what drew me to Club 57 is it was this kind of space that mixed nightlife with sort of performance art and visual art, and you had basically people putting on theatrical performances, gallery shows, you had drag, you sort of had this very like mixed nightlife meets art space. And it attracted all these characters, like Keith Haring was a regular, and Zhang Guangqi and John Sex, and so maybe you could talk about some,
Right.
like, tell me about John Sex, what do you remember?
Well, John
Maybe he's in the
Sex,
photo.
John Sex was probably the most lovable kind of guy. I mean, he was really affectionate, he was really fun, he was really silly, he was really talented. He did, aside from performing, he did beautiful silk screens. Sometimes we would work for him and help him with the silk screens. It's hard, I don't even know what more to say about him, but he just, I mean, I guess the best would be, to see his looks or to see some videos of his shows, but there wasn't that many videos then because not everybody had a video camera then. But, he performed in a lot of places and he did strips and he's just the
Yeah.
most amazing person.
Every photo I
And
ever
it's-
come across of John, he's got
Right.
this crazy blonde pompadour and he's wearing almost no clothing, and I think he had a
And the
song-
sock in his,
he had a song
sock in
called
his
Hustle,
crotch.
Hustle with My Muscle or
right,
something.
which actually Danny did the record company, her and her friend Lori
Okay.
put that record out, so we were very close to John Sex. He lived on St. Mark's Place right next door to Club 57, and him and Wendy Wild, who's the most wild person you'll ever, and nicest, were boyfriend and girlfriend from Long Island when they came to the city
Uh-huh.
and lived together, so we had a very tight-knit crowd at Club 57, and to this day, we're still all really close. I mean, many have died, but we're still like, with Facebook, I guess, and events that have happened, like the MoMA event, we're still all really, really close friends. It's amazing. We're all very smart and together, pretty much, so very lucky to have that.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like a wonderful community, but it also bled into another space where you frequented, which was the Pyramid
The
Club,
Pyramid,
which is
right.
also in the book,
Right.
which managed to last a lot longer in various formats. It just closed kind of in 2020 officially.
Right.
So tell me, how did you kind of discover the Pyramid and
Well, it was kind of a progression, Club 57, then we really didn't go to the Pyramid in the very beginning because it was kind of a little druggy and it just wasn't, I mean, even though a lot of our friends were there, we just didn't go. And then I started bartending at King Tut's Wawa Hut across the street on the corner. And then like people would come in and hang out at the bar, and finally I said, oh, let's just start going there again. And the one picture, yes, this picture, actually, this one on the cover of the book, was the first one I actually took of all these people because I had been doing some work for the Daily News, some pictures, and we walked by the Pyramid and they were all outside. It was like the first time I took a picture and there was this one. They all just happened to be outside. That's how the Pyramid was. There could be 5 people in the place and everybody would be completely done up and doing a show. And it happened often that it would like that. And being that we live so close to it, it's just like walk over there. And then I was at the Wawa Hut, so I just walk across the street and take some pictures and go back to my job. So, but it was wonderful. We loved it. It was great having a place in the East Village that we felt comfortable going to, because even today, I don't think anything's replaced that from the Pyramid, so.
Yeah, and there's some photos in the slideshow, I think, of some other characters who performed at pyramid, like Ethelberger.
Ethel, yes.
Perhaps do you have any specific memories of Ethel?
Well, everybody loves Ethel, Ethel was one of a kind person, and no matter how big in performance world Ethel was, she would still show up and dance on the bar for tips, and and just a part of everything, just warm and welcoming, and if Ethel liked you, then that was it. It was just amazing, and I mean, it's kind of hard to describe these people who are just so perfect. It's like, do you have anything to say about Ethel?
Sure, okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks,
okay.
I appreciate it.
All right. Well, we first met Ethel at Club 57 because Ethel was doing kind of like one-man shows with an accordion, and they would be based on classics. Ethel had been in, I believe, Theater of the Absurd. She had done a lot of stuff already in the 60s and early 70s before we got there. And so she was already, what we considered old by the time, she came to Club 57. Maybe she's about 35 or 40 at the most. And then also, did all kinds of stuff at PS 122, at La Mama, and at the Pyramid, and was always up for dancing on the bar at the Pyramid. It was just super fun and just a fun person to be around. And if she liked you, it's great. If she didn't like you, well, see you later. But she liked most everyone.
Yeah, and I mean, Ethel, and the Pyramid specifically was kind of known for this very experimental drag and sort of, kind of what we would call today gender fuck, or just, it wasn't about, trying to be a beautiful woman. It was not about female impersonation anymore.
So here's a picture of Ethel, and this was one night actually when she was dancing on the bar in this green dress.
Oh, there it is.
Yes. So you can see Ethel was not exactly trying to look like a, beautiful woman from the 50s.
But nobody was really. Really nobody was at that time. I mean, like here,
Yeah, you had other performers like Taboo as well.
Taboo. Yeah, nobody was. It wasn't that glamour. It wasn't that glamour look. It was fun. It was supposed to be fun. It was supposed to be silly.
Yes.
And that's pretty much what all it was. I think that's really changed. I think quite a bit. Since I don't go to most of what's happening now, and I don't watch RuPaul's thing really.
RuPaul's
But
very
RuPaul was a regular at the Pyramid.
Yes.
RuPaul was there.
But back then,
RuPaul was dancing on the bar, and RuPaul knew how to get those tips. I'm not kidding though, right? Remember we used to talk about that? RuPaul
Yeah.
would know how to work that crowd
Well,
and get a lot of tips.
RuPaul preferred the straight night. Straight nights at Pyramid, and then it would just be like, hi, don't I look great? Give me $1.
No, but it's true. RuPaul just knew how to work the bar. And really, we never thought of RuPaul. I never thought of RuPaul as like a great singer or anything.
I don't think anyone still thinks
I know it's kind of true. One time,
the technology is not to auto-tune.
well, that song was very catchy and really good and perfect.
Yes.
It wasn't really about singing,
Right.
really. So,
Correct.
but it's exciting. It's exciting to see Ru being
Yeah.
so rich and famous. I think it's great. Makes me happy to see that. So I guess those were we were all there like almost every night, right? Or at least 3 times a week because we just walk over. It's like going to your local bar like people do. But I've never been a bar person myself, so having the shows and it's the same thing with the boy bar too. It was in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so another
They had
place
shows
in the
and,
book is Boy Bar. So I was going to
Right.
ask you said you worked there briefly.
Right, I bartended there
Yes.
and Danny DJ'd there.
And so Boy Bar was not too far from Pyramid, but was also kind of a very drag-centric bar. that
On St.
came
Mark's
out
Place.
On St. Mark's Place. And so
Right.
what can you tell me about Boy Bar?
Well, the shows are more controlled there because there was a Matthew who was basically running them. So they would actually come up with, it wasn't like you could just get up and do whatever you wanted necessarily. Some people, they had that too, but it was great. It was like they choreographed whole shows. The place was great. And the owner was crazy, straight, nutty hairdresser.
Yes.
And he kind of kept a pretty good eye on how the place was being run, but at the same time, he would skate around and try and pick up women who would show up there and get really drunk and stuff, just to give you an idea of the atmosphere. But the shows were really good. It was the same kind of thing. It was a very fashionable, beautiful crowd. I remember looking around and everybody just looked so perfect, the way they dressed. And so it was, it was,
Yes,
It was-
I believe the boy bar drag queens called themselves the boy bar beauties.
That's right.
right.
And there was this kind of tense competition between the boy bar beauties and the maybe not so beautiful pyramid girls.
Yeah, they were
Really?
very different because the pyramid was being run by the same people who were doing the shows. Whereas the boy bar, Matthew was the boss, and then he had the owner who was over him, who was kind of demanding in a lot of ways. So I think that's a huge difference. And that's true of Club 57 too, because Club 57 was basically just run by the people who participated in the shows, like Anne, who was like the main person. And it was also had much more of a women running it too, whereas these other places were pretty male dominated, I would say. Whereas Club 57, Anne was the manager. I mean, it was
Yes,
a
I
whole
think I
different.
interviewed Susan Hannaford, who was involved, yeah.
Right. So it was a whole different atmosphere in some ways, I guess you'd say.
And then another space that is sort of in the book is Bar Room 432, which became Mother, which was host to a
Right.
variety of parties. It sort of
Right.
started as basically hosting this Friday night party called Click Club,
Right.
and then later on added on all these other parties called Meet, Jackie 60,
right.
Click and Drag. And so did you, I guess
Right.
to start with, did you go to Click Club at all, or did you?
Yes,
I was
she
DJ
was
there.
a DJ there for
Okay,
quite a
Jamie was
while,
the DJ.
yeah.
What do you remember from Click Club?
Well, it was fun. I mean, I was recruited to work there, but I was subbing for a DJ at the Duchess. Was the Duchess in there in your book?
It's not, but
It's not.
Duchess was a lesbian bar, yeah.
The Duchess was, mainly African-American lesbian bar. I was subbing there, and the two women, Julie and Jocelyn, came in there and heard me play, and Jocelyn was like, okay, come play at the Click Club, which we're starting. So I started working there, and like all these girls came that was like, really, we thought we were like cooler than like the old school, lesbians, but I mean, we're just
No.
a bunch of dykes, so, but it was,
But
and it was
big
a lot of
change.
fun. It was a lot of fun.
And it was a big change. From what I could tell, because it was a different atmosphere than what we had seen in the past, I think. I think it did start like a new.
Yeah, we thought we were the
Yeah.
cool girls anyway,
Well,
It was very sex positive and.
Yeah, it was different. I think it was different because,
Yeah,
I felt more comfortable there than say had I gone to the Duchess, let's say, or had I gone to
Yeah.
even Crazy Nannies or any one of those other
true,
lesbian
true.
bars in the neighborhood. That to me was more because they had dancers, it was just like a very sexy atmosphere, I guess you'd say.
True.
Which I hadn't seen so much in the past. And
Mm.
I don't know if it changed things forever or not, but that was
But it lasted for, I think, 10 years or more than
Did
10
it?
years, yeah.
Well, they moved it.
Yes, it moved around.
It moved around some places.
Then there was Girl Bar before that, actually.
Girl
Was
Bar,
that around
Was
the
that
same
before
time?
that? Oh.
Girl Bar, I believe, was the offshoot, or the ladies' night at Boy Bar, is that correct?
Well,
Or it started.
really, someone just wanted to do it there and they said okay, and I don't think it lasted very long.
It
Right.
moved around like.
Yeah, it did.
It,
She did.
I DJ'd for it sometimes. They
Right.
moved, they were at the World, then they were at the Boy Bar, they were at Cave Canem.
Right, so, that's true. Yeah. But that was more like, that wasn't as fun as the Click Club. That was more sort of a corporate looking thing. Corporate women more. I thought
I don't know.
Yeah, I remember
And then,
the women who was here.
and what about Jackie 60, which was another
Oh,
party
that's-
that came?
Yeah,
Yes.
Jackie 60 is great.
What can you say about Jackie
Okay.
60, or what do you remember?
Well, they had really crazy shows. The people who were running it were our friends and they're amazing. And how do you describe Jackie 60? It was just wild, like it was in the meatpacking district and it was before that was popular. So it was kind of on this cobblestone, dark road. And then all around it were the meat packing.
The meat was still hanging from.
Yeah, they had, you'd get out,
Yeah.
because you would get out at like 4 a.m, because I did the code check there, which was like amazing. And you'd get out at 4 a.m, and the butcher guys would be showing up and dragging this stuff around. It was just wild, really. Right? And they had just all kinds of crazy shows. It wasn't necessarily gay, it was really a mix.
Yes.
It was very much a mix, which is unusual, really. And they still do events, they haven't so much, the same people who did Jackie 60, two of them, do Night of 1,000 Stevies, for instance, which was just like last couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
So
that was
they were
Chi-Chi and Valenti and Johnny Denny.
So they've been doing parties like all over for many years, so we've been, part of all of their parties, really, we work with them, we just, just love them, I just love seeing them, I just saw them the other night at an event, at a show, so, but their shows were just wild, I mean, they were like very sex-oriented a lot of times, they had poetry readings, where Chi-Chi would get up there and like, they used to have this chant that they used to do all the time with their poetry. They were like no other place probably, at that time. So, and any thing to say about Jackie 60?
Just that, at Jackie 60, they had a great door policy where like
Right.
celebrities thought like that they're going to get in free.
And there were a lot of celebrities
But
showing up
a lot of
too.
celebrities would show up, and sometimes I did the door there, and there were 3 tickets. One was free, one was half price, and one was full price. And in comes Kate Moss, and they hand her a ticket, it's the full price one. And she like walks up to me like she's just gonna walk by, and I'm like, that'll be, whatever it was, $15. She was pretty shocked.
Yeah.
But everybody got a huge laugh out of that as soon as she walked in.
And they had bar dancers too, right? Didn't they have people dancing in the bar too, I think, or was that Click Club did? The Click Club did, I know that.
I don't
They had-
remember.
Yeah, I don't either, but, well, they had like, their friends who were like crazy, who were the waiters, like messy drag queens, like,
Yeah, like
Faux Pas was like a waiter all messy.
Otter would be like waitressing completely
Yeah.
nude.
Right.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Otter made it into the book, I believe.
Oh,
She
great,
had a
okay.
infamous story, I believe, at the Quick Club. But
Oh,
I-
well, she did waitress nude at the Click Club one night, and
Yeah.
some of the girls like were not having it.
Oh, no, really? That's so crazy. And it was also a racial mix too, the Click Club. It
Yeah,
really
which was good.
yeah, it was great, which you don't see always, especially probably in lesbian circles, I don't know. Well, I haven't been out lately, so I don't know what it's like, but yeah, it was definitely a good racial mix there. It was great. It was very special at that time. Should we talk about your book now?
Yeah, we are.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna take us back a little bit. I wanted to sort of, because we were talking about Club 57 and Pyramid, and obviously around this time, we kind of have AIDS come into the picture, and I was wondering, I wasn't there, but obviously we still feel the kind of impact of that today, and so that really sort of certainly affected kind of
Oh,
who was
absolutely.
going and what clubs stayed open, and so how did that hit Club 57?
Well, it hit very hard. And it was sort of towards the end of Club 57, which might have had a lot to do with it even ending, because some of the people just couldn't perform anymore or go there. But there were a lot of reasons why it ended. But I think that as a crowd, it really I think we needed to have these kind of fun events. We needed to go out and see fun and crazy things and meet new people. And I think it brought us together because we were all, what were we gonna do? So,
Yeah,
Well, I mean, yeah, like one of the first people was Club 57 regular Klaus Nomi. He was one of the early ones to die, and at the time, people were like, I think that we knew that you don't get it from coughing or touching somebody's hand, but I think that a lot of people did not know, and the things of like going to hospitals with your friends, and I'm sure everyone here has experienced that, where you bring your friend to the emergency room and suddenly like they're gloving up and masking up as if like, oh my God, I'm gonna have to touch this person, and it was awful.
right.
It was absolutely awful, and but people still went to the clubs and they still saw each other, and
I think we needed it
and
even
the
more.
women got involved, like it wasn't like, only guys and women didn't care. No, the lesbian community was very much involved in the protests and caring for people. So,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that I don't know, I think it helped in some ways make us try and have more fun, and we did because that's all we had.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, you know, when you do the research, it's devastating to see all these characters who were just, you know, working so hard to, you know, make their name in nightlife, and then they all disappear.
Right, like
And
John Sachs.
you have John Sachs, who didn't make it. You have Klaus
Right. He was
Nomi,
an early
as we
one.
just said.
Right,
We also have Tseng Kwang-chi and
Right.
Keith Haring and
right.
so many others. Ethel, you know, like there were so
Right,
many that were
all of them.
just
I mean,
taken
right,
away very quickly, and so that really sort of,
Right.
you know, kills your performer base, kills your customer base off. It really definitely, you know, cuts into it. But I think what's also amazing to see is places like the Pyramid kept going, and, you know, clubs kept running and kept throwing events, and so yes, like you were
Right.
saying,
I think it
was-
fueled it a bit. I
Yeah.
think because, you know, we would just sit in the house and cry, you know, so we at least could hang out together and be together. And then when somebody died, we were together. We had this group of people to share it with. And when we helped people, we were together too. Like, you know, we spent time helping John Sachs, you know, when things were really bad. You know, whoever your closest friends were.
Of course.
So,
And so did these nightclubs also kind of become spaces for gathering to grieve or mourn or plan
I think
events?
so. I mean, we did have events, but yeah, I guess.
A lot of benefits.
Yeah, benefits, right, lots of benefits, right. You know, it depended on the person, like John Sachs didn't want anything, remember, he made that very clear. He didn't want
Yes.
any memorial, and he destroyed all of his costumes, he got rid of everything, he just didn't want any, that was just the way he dealt with it, for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So it depended on the person, you know. But I guess we did have memorials, but it wasn't, I don't remember a lot of memorials though, maybe because it was happening so much, it
Not
wasn't
so
really-
much at the clubs.
And just in general, maybe because people were dying so much that it's like, you know what, every week you're gonna have like a, you know, it's just like too much maybe to go through all that in a memorial also, so, you know, but. Tough one.
Do you have any standout memories or performances that you can share from any of these clubs that you went to, Club 57 or Pyramid? Particular night?
Do you want me
You
to
can say
one?
something, yeah, go
Okay.
ahead, I don't care.
All right, so at the Pyramid in 1987, I believe it was, there was this, you know, celestial thing happening called the harmonic convergence. We're going to have a harmonic convergence party at the Pyramid, and so Sister Dimension bought like 200 hits of blotter acid and cut them all up and gave them to Wendy Wild in the coat check and gave them out to everybody, and within like 1 hour, everybody was just screaming with laughter, hilariously, you know, and Dean Johnson, we just saw the
great.
documentary, The Big
It's a great
Johnson, which you
movie.
got to see, is so
It's
good.
really great.
Another character.
He took about
See that.
5 of them, and
But
he
Dean
was
Johnson's
just like-
also very, very, very tall. So maybe
yes, yeah, he took
Maybe
about
that's
5 of them, and he was like stage diving off the stage and rolling around on the floor laughing, and then everyone had silly string and they were spraying it, and then it got on the record players, and it was just absolutely the funniest thing ever.
What
So that's a good one.
Yeah. What about one from Club 57? I'm just like, I can't even think. I'm like I don't know, a particular night that stood out at Club 57, would you say?
I think, well, The Sound of Music with Holly Woodlawn was great. I mean, it's like, but to do different sets, I mean, you know, there wasn't really sets. So what they would do is like one scene's gonna be on this side of the room, and then like they do it, and then it's like rotate, and then everyone take their chair and turn it to the other side of the room,
Right, okay.
and something would happen on that side.
Right.
And, you know, and Marc Shaman was really fun to have around, because he's the kind of person who could just sit down at a piano and play anything that whatever he, you know, came to mind, or if somebody suggested something, he could do it. So, you know, the two of them like coming up with a silly version of Sound of Music with Holly Woodlawn, John Sachs and Wendy Wild were in it. Was it J.P. Doherty, was he in it? Yes, he was.
Yes.
just super talented people doing like the silliest version of Sound of Music. It was just really a great memory.
I think that both the Pyramid and Club 57, there really wasn't much emphasis in having to make money, even at the bar, just because the way they were run, pretty much. And that I don't think exists anymore. That's unfortunate, because that's why you can collect all these people and they'll put their energy into something, because nobody's really standing over them. It gives them free rein to pretty much do what they want and not worry so much about what if people come or don't come, what if they pay at the door, because none of us hardly really got paid much anyways for anything. So, so I think
Yeah,
that made a huge
I
difference.
think that's a really good point. That really fueled the creativity because no one was trying to, sell something for profit. They were just experimenting.
Right. And I don't think people were competing with each other either. I think it was really just in fun. Everybody just had fun. I don't think anybody was saying, oh, I want to be better than that one, or, get more publicity than that one. I mean, maybe as time went on, that changed, but, that I don't know. Like now it's so different because it's all about competition, like the RuPaul thing, right? So
Yes.
that wasn't the case. So like this was at Club 57. I mean, just to give you an idea, that's Anne and, just how crazy, wacky stuff. And even Ann Magnuson, we're still good friends now to this day. I mean, pretty much all of us at Club 57 are still good friends. It's amazing, really, to me, that a collection of people that we still know to this day, that's Wendy Whyland, by the way, that we still know to this day, that we still have things in common, we still see each other, it's amazing, really. I feel very lucky.
We've talked a lot about a lot of the characters. Maybe I'll ask you about a couple we haven't mentioned yet,
Okay.
if you have anything. I would love to hear more about Mr. Fashion, if you have any, who appears in some of the photos. Gerard.
Yeah.
He went by Mr. Fashion, so that's
Right.
already.
Well, yeah.
What
I
can
mean,
you say about him?
he was one of the few black people, that actually that was regular in this crowd of Club 57. And he did a lot of different things. He could be like this hot guy, like a hot sexy guy, and he was a really good singer too, and then he'd come up with some crazy lyrics, or he'd make a crazy outfits in 15 minutes out of garbage bags. He was kind of famous for that. And then he could get on stage with his dresses and things that he made really quickly. So he was just part of the crowd. I mean, he did his own shows. Trying to think of anything special. He was a good friend of ours.
He had a band, which was basically him and one other person with a Casio, called Frankie Lyman's Nephew and the Drugged Adults. And he said he was Frankie Lyman's nephew, and there's no reason not to believe him. He's, I think, from New Jersey. Some of the songs were really funny. They had a song about Nancy Reagan, and it was the song was they're going to shoot Reagan, but I don't care. I'm gonna fuck Nancy on the White House stairs. I saw Ron Jr. at the Anvil. I saw him getting rimmed. They say that he does ballet. Oh wait, no, they say that he got married and ballet keeps him trim. That's my favorite song of his.
Another one I would love to hear about is Hattie Hathaway.
Oh, Hattie. Okay, Hattie.
I am.
Everybody knows Hattie.
Yes, what can you tell us about for those who don't know?
Hattie kind of brought people together at the Pyramid. For instance, for instance, for me, so I went there and I started taking pictures, and I was just doing it, it was fun, and I had done a club, and I just take them, and then he said to me, you know what, he said, save your receipts, we're having a big New Year's Eve party, so you could do your slideshow, but save all your receipts because we want to pay for stuff. I mean, which was really nice because no one had ever offered that before, maybe even to this day to some degree, and it's just Hattie, he just knew how to, he was kind of the manager of the club. Him and Alan, a Sister Dimension, were
Yes.
managing the club. And he always did really crazy acts because he was never beautiful, he never looked like a modelly or anything. So him and Sister Dimension would just do really kooky kind of acts. But he was really funny. He just knew how to be funny, but very kind of straight man funny. Right, they'd get up and read scripts and things, but the way he did it was just always really funny. And then he was very involved in
Black Lips.
Black Lips, yes. He was very involved in Black Lips, which was a weekly Monday night, I think it was.
It was a
Right.
theater, it was on, was it Monday or Tuesday night? I
Right.
forget which night, but it was, in the middle of the week. They'd come up with a new production every week.
Right, and there always wouldn't even be that many people there. I mean, less than what's here right now. And
Yeah.
then they would do this, and that was also who's also in charge of it.
Anoni
Anoni,
Yes.
Yeah.
Right,
was one of the
Right,
main people. Kabuki
right,
was one of them.
Right, and so-
Marty, Domination.
right. It was a lot of people. And so once again, it didn't care if they made any money, really. And of course, everybody likes to make money, but it wasn't. They didn't care if anybody drank at the bar. They just had that space to do it in without any pressure. So it was just a unique time, I think, for a lot of that kind of attitude.
I think you touched on something else I wanted to ask or talk about is today when I go out or when we go out, everyone has a camera in their pockets.
Right.
And so that wasn't the case back then. And so there were a few people who kind of went out and decided to bring a camera along. And so how did that
Right.
start for you, or where did that begin?
Well, when I lived in San Francisco, I was kind of lost. Didn't really have a lot to know what I was doing. And once again, the rents were really cheap, and I didn't have to work that much. And I wasn't quite sure what I was doing. And I don't know. I think I just wanted to get a camera, and all the cameras, like in the '70s, for instance, were really big. It was like big Nikons and things, and I knew that wasn't going to work for me. So then I tried a small one. I didn't like it. So, anyways, I went into a camera store in San Francisco, and I said, I want to get a small camera. And they pulled out this camera, and it was called Minolta, which is actually really a Leica, which I had no idea what a Leica was, and I think it was about $400 or $300 at the time with a lens, because Leica had put these out cheaper, but it was the same camera, which it is, and with Minolta lens, I'm not sure, but so I bought this camera. It was like a little camera like this big, little Leica, and a rangefinder, and so it was really easy for me to just throw it in my bag and like a purse, right, and go anywhere I wanted with it. So it made a huge difference. Plus the quality was so good too. And when I first moved to New York, I'd seen a slideshow at a smaller club, and it was great. It was like different people who I don't even know. But I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. Oh, I would love to take pictures like that. And so then when I started going to Club 57, it was kind of my contribution to Club 57 and to my friends and what. So, and I was good at it, So when you're good at something, then you kind of find your way. So that's kind of what happened for me. And just kept doing it. I'm doing it now still. Like I went to a night of 1,000 Stevies and took these really nice portraits and stuff. So I'm still doing it. But it's usually only people who are dressed up. I'm not good at straight photography. Like I can't do headshots. I can't do artwork. I can't do normal things. It just doesn't work. Modeling, wasn't good at that. So they're all like same kind of stuff. It's still going on right now. I mean, if I wanted to, I could probably go out every night and do that if I wanted to.
No, I mean, I think I am thankful that you did that because now we have this incredible archive of
Right.
photography.
Right.
And I think the fact that you were friends with all these people also lended this
Right.
intimacy to a
Right.
lot of your photos,
Right.
which, not everyone can capture just
Right.
so easily.
Right, and at the time, I didn't think, oh, these pictures are gonna be of interest or value or anything really. It was just they're my friends and it was fun, it was my contribution. And then I started doing some work for the Daily News, Nightlife, I forget her name. Anyways,
Dinah Prince.
Dinah Prince, I don't know if you know who she is, but she did a whole articles on Nightlife. And, so it just kind of went from there, I don't know, I just kept doing it, to this day.
So how does it feel now to kind of have these photos still be, not only like appreciated but revered and, contributing to history
I think
and
in a
seeing
way,
all your
yeah.
friends,
I think in a way it is still contributing, and it does make me feel good to see that. And in fact, I'm going to be in some photo show in upstate New York, and two of the pictures that are going to be in fact, they're in the newer book. One is Sweetie, and one is Hattie. And I thought, oh my God, but they're both dead, right? So I thought, well, what, that's nice in a way though, because certainly you think, well, after I'm gone, somebody will remember me or whatever, which of course people do. Of course they do. But I did put on their dates, which I didn't put in my book, but I did put the dates when they were born, when they died, because I thought, well, because people should know that when they look at these pictures, So, but I didn't know at the time that, oh, these pictures are going to be, and that people are going to want to see them. I don't know. I just didn't really think at the time, In fact, I had them all slides boxes just thrown in the bag for years
Hmm.
before I sat down and started sorting them out. So I have a lot of stuff that I've never shown, you know.
I mean, I think that's true for a lot of people, and I think
Yeah.
it's becoming, even more important to sort of
I guess
get these
right.
archives preserved and.
True. Right. Someday I would like to have a slideshow of just the ones that's just kind of sitting in the boxes, you know, because you pick out the best ones and
Yes,
then the
of
rest
course. Yeah.
just kind of sit there. So let's talk about you.
Sure. What would you like to know?
Why are you looking at me for that question? I don't know, like, what was it like for you being young and growing up in New York City and going to your first gay bars and things like that?
Yeah, so I mean, like I think I said a little bit, I grew up here, I grew up on the Upper West Side, and I had no gay history training, and I think I was in my, mid-20s when I learned for the first time that I was walking by the building that housed the Continental Baths in the 70s every single day to get to school. And so, I think that was like part of my awakening, was just realizing that there were these crazy spaces, like this very lavish gay bathhouse where Bette Midler, kind of started her career right under my nose for so many years, and nobody bothered to tell me. So that was really what kind of started it for me. And then, I think just learning about all these other queer spaces that were around me, like I think James Baldwin used to live like around the corner from me. And I keep discovering all these places that were just very close. And so I didn't go to my first gay bar until my first week of college, which was 2008. And then the second gay bar I went to was called Splash, which, was really big in the 90s, but sort of by 2008 was in its final years, and nobody had told me its history. So I think I went there, and I think I was like, it's fine, it's nothing special, but it was extremely important in the 90s and sort of revolutionized the gay bar experience. So I think, those kind of experiences really opened my eyes to just like, it's important to know the spaces that are no longer here, to know the spaces that are still here and what they were like 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Even when I went to the Pyramid, it was straight, basically.
Right, well, it has been for a long time.
Yeah, so, I didn't know, it's extremely important drag history and avant-garde art history until much later.
But what moment did you in your head just think, I'm gonna work on this project, where was that moment, where were you, how did that come about?
Yeah, I think that started with the, after I watched a few documentaries, and I'd always kind of had this interest in queer history, but then it was when I started to just kind of look up physical spaces in New York City that were no longer there, and I think I was particularly struck by the ones that didn't have a lot of documentation, and so it was like, you could find an address, or you found, a small article about it, or one photo that was taken, and I was like, I know there must be more, I know there are people who went there, how do you find that?
Right.
And I think one interesting place has been Facebook, where there's all these Facebook groups now devoted to either a specific decade or a specific club.
Everything.
There is a specific Facebook group just for Crisco Disco, for example, that,
Right.
it's not that active, but it has all the photos that have ever been taken at Crisco Disco.
Right.
And there's, one for a lot of other clubs too. So I
Right.
think there's a Club 57 one.
Right.
So it's a really interesting place where
Right.
all these people upload their own personal photos or photos that they find, and a lot of their own personal stories.
Right.
And even people just, reconnecting after many decades.
Even restaurants, there was a restaurant on 102 2nd Avenue, a bunch of people worked there from that period, and they even have a Facebook page, so,
Yes.
not much on it, but,
But I think it just shows
yeah, they
them-
still find each other though, somebody will say, have you seen so-and-so, and then somebody will say, oh, yes, but, so it's good.
It shows that there's a hunger to preserve this history, and we're just
Yeah.
sort of figuring out how to do that.
It's true.
And,
I mean, it's true, these photos of mine, it's, like I said, I never expected much, they just sent boxes, whatever. But I'm still to this day, you contacted me, someone in Germany, they're selling a Keith Haring, and that picture that I have with Keith Haring, and they wanted to use that for their promotion or whatever, it just keeps happening. It keeps going, yeah, it's interesting.
So in some ways, the internet is good because it helps us
Yeah.
find one another and find photos and connect with
Right.
other people. So I think in that sense, that's how I got started at least.
Right. But do you remember the moment when you were just sitting there and you said, I have this good idea, do you remember that? I'm just curious. how that, you know, like that.
Yeah, I think it was once I had started to like, you know, I started just looking up a few places, and then I think once I started to write them down and just, you know, map out connections, and all of a sudden you're like realizing the Mud Club was connected to Club 57, and
Right,
Club 57 sort of bled over with Pyramid, and so you start to kind of build this web of like,
right,
you know, what came first, how did that, you know, morph into the next place.
and then the bigger clubs too.
Right.
We're just talking about the small ones now.
Right, and then there's all these
Yeah.
mega clubs we haven't even
Right.
touched on that were also, you know, kind of concurrent.
Right,
So I think it's also really interesting just to see how different communities found different spaces. People who were going to the Pyramid were not necessarily going to the Saint, which was this, you know,
right.
giant, mega gay, mostly gay white men dance club in the 80s.
Yeah, well, the Saint prompted the Clones Go Home thing, you know, stencils that Keith did. And a couple of the people from Club 57, Andy Reese and a few others had this idea that they were going to go in drag and pretend to be Christian church ladies in front of the Saint, and they were gonna like bang tambourines and like tell them they were going to hell. But this never actually happened, but Keith did do the Clones Go Home stencil.
Right, he put them up on poles and stuff, right?
Yeah, but it's like all
Keith
over
Haring.
them, yeah, he did them all over,
Yeah.
so funny.
Right. And I think the East Village and West Village was pretty much, it was like a separation.
Yeah, it was.
And that's why I was happy to kind of move to the East Village, because even though the West Village is beautiful, I mean, I got a better apartment anyways, but I didn't quite fit in. It was a little snooty even then. I was on 11th Street between 5th and 6th, and it was a little snooty. I remember I had some silly punk t-shirt on that said, "Fuck you" or something. I don't know what, some lady like stopped me on the street. She was horrified, and I didn't even know what was going on. So the East Village definitely had its own type.
Right.
There's no question about that. And there were people who lived in the West Village, but they would have to come over there. So. Should we take any questions?
Yeah, I think
Yeah, I think any,
Are you okay to open up
Yeah,
to questions?
yeah.
Sure.
You mentioned the Mud Club briefly. When I was there used to be people shooting up heroin in the bathroom stalls. And I'm curious how much drug culture was involved in the groups that you were with.
Right, I would say, probably more than I even knew, you know what I mean? Because I never did heroin or anything like that. I'm like a pot smoker, if anything, you know, and I'm drinking, whatever. But I would say that it probably was going on, and I think especially at the Pyramid early on, that was pretty bad. I think that was the worst, the early Pyramid, and that's why we didn't even
And the
go
Mud
there.
Club, because I
The
worked
Mud Club,
there
I don't know,
too.
yeah.
And it was like coke all along the bar,
Right,
and then the heroin in the bathroom.
right.
I think-
And the
I think-
owner, you know, he's a big cokehead, he
Yeah.
was a mess,
Steve Mass.
yeah.
Yeah, I know his brother.
Oh, do you,
okay.
okay, yes,
Okay, so
yeah.
no. I would say it's probably, especially coke then became pretty prevalent in the clubs too, which to me made more sense than heroin, I guess, because I mean, heroin just puts you to sleep. You know what I mean? Coke, at least you know it's like coffee.
It's fun.
It's like coffee. To me, it's like coffee. You could have a shot of espresso and feel the same kind of in a way. So, but I would say it's probably more when you don't do them. You don't know, you're not in that crowd so much and they don't talk about it, so you don't really realize, I think, a lot. But there were a number of people that were on heroin, there's no question about it, you know.
Yes.
Did you focus mostly on clubs, or do you have a lot of research on the bars in your neighborhood? I live right by you, I think, and we had a plethora of bars on Amsterdam and Columbus Avenue. The Candle was probably the most famous.
Yes. In the book, it's definitely nightlife heavy, but it covers kind of a variety of spaces. There's the Oscar Wilde bookstores in there. There's Central Park and the piers, so there's kind of a variety of spaces. But obviously, you know, I think queer history often has found itself at the bar or at the nightclub. I think I went to the Candle right at its end as well, also not knowing its history. So I went to a lot of spaces when they were on their last leg, I
At least you
think.
got to do it.
That neighborhood used to be called the Swish Alps.
So yeah, by the time I was of age, I think that was the really only gay bar left on the Upper West Side, whereas there used to be a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, in the back.
Did Heather's make it into your book at all?
Heather's, no, it did not, so I also run this Instagram account, so I have covered Heather's there, but with a book you have confines, and so you can only fit so many spaces, so I had a lot of places on my list that got cut from the book.
Heather's actually gave me one of my first breaks as a DJ, and then I went on to DJ at Pyramid for a couple of nights.
Amazing.
But Pyramid Basement, I would say was still very gay. I feel like the basement was maintained queerness as opposed to, I think the top floor was 80s night every night for, like early 2010s.
Yes.
And that's what brought a lot of money. But I remember I was in the basement DJing, and I hadn't seen these people in a really long time. I ran into people I haven't seen in a long time, and I was asked to take a break between my first set and my second set because somebody wanted to do a performance art piece where they had like wrapped these Barbie dolls in cellophane in a box and stabbed it. And and I remember I picked up a zine that was, because there were like glow-in-the-dark dildos stuck in every single part of the wall. And it was a spread of like zines, and I picked up one of the zines not knowing what's inside, and then I see my friend's face on page 5. And his name was Kyle. He had this performance thing called Emotronics, which is a really weird performance art thing. And the headline was, "How to Get Paid to Shit on the Internet."
So I
That was my
guess,
favorite memory of Pyramid.
what, do you know what year that was? Like,
I think that must have been 2011, 2012.
okay, so not so.
So it sounded like some of the spirit of Pyramid
Yeah.
lived on for a while, yeah.
Yeah, the problem with the Pyramid is they have horrible owners. They didn't make for a comfortable situation. When these new owners took over, after, pretty much when like Whispers, which was the big Sunday gay night at the Pyramid, which
Yes.
Sister Dimension was a DJ and a dating DJ for that too sometimes. But I think even when the new owners came in, they kind of stood back, but it just didn't have that atmosphere when they kind of took over. It just kind of changed things. They weren't even so aggressive about money, but it's just the control or something that they had over the place that really changed things quite a bit.
So,
Yes.
what would you say are clubs now? Like $3 Bill in Brooklyn seems like a more performance-oriented gay club. What would you
Yeah, I mean,
say are-
Brooklyn still has a lot of the spaces, and I think what we've shifted to now are kind of, in terms of larger venues at least, are larger venues that host parties, queer parties or gay parties or lesbian parties, and also host all other kinds of parties. And so you have like, the Knockdown Center or Elsewhere, or all these just kind of bigger venues that happen to have gay or queer nights sometimes. But that's where we get the bigger venues from. And then the smaller bars are still kind of, scattered around.
Yeah.
But I mean, Chelsea was once a haven for gay bars, and now there's like 2 left after Barracuda closed. So it depends, the neighborhoods are shifting. Now they're all in Hell's Kitchen, I would say.
Do you go to clubs in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I would say I mostly go out in Brooklyn. Not so much Hell's Kitchen anymore, but
Do you go out to see performances? I mean, since your book's more like that in a way, instead of just a regular gay bar or something.
yeah, I'll go to, I used to go to Barracuda for drag. I would go out, depends. Yeah, $3 bill. It varies.
Also, have you thought about where your archives are gonna go?
For me, no, I haven't really. I'm kind of living in this live for today kind of thing. It's a good question,
Being as
though, I
a
don't know.
photographer, you have,
No, I
that
know.
is kind of a,
No, I agree.
it's a real test of trying to figure it out a lot of times.
Right, I haven't, I mean, MoMA did that Club 57 show, so, it's
I know Fels is a big collector of
That's
downtown.
NYU, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
NYU fails.
I just have an attitude about NYU.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
that's
Yeah, so,
And then, I know there's a organization called Boo Hoo Ray,
Yes.
took Joey Arias' stuff
uh-huh,
and was able to put it, I think, in Harvard, his archives.
I
and
see,
stuff.
yeah, no, well, it's definitely something to think about,
Yes, definitely.
sadly. Sorry, what did you say?
You could get money for it.
Maybe.
Yes, I
maybe.
think Boo Ray does that for money.
Maybe right. I've never even heard of it. I knew that Joey Harris did, you know, because we're
Ann
still in
was
touch with
talking
him.
about that.
Yeah, I know that he
Yeah.
did sell stuff to somebody, but I didn't know what that's who it was.
I saw a hand up way in the
Yes,
back.
we had some questions in the back. Yes, Ally.
You were talking about characters of Club 57. Andy, I should have realized this connection earlier, but one of your photographs on the slideshow is of a cousin of mine, KDK.
Oh,
Yay.
okay, yeah, we're good friends with Katie K. Oh, that's
Amazing.
amazing.
Do you have any memories of performances or outfits of hers?
I think, you know, I have a picture of her in that
Yes.
did you saw the picture?
Yeah,
right?
Yes,
yeah,
I
yeah,
saw
yeah.
the picture,
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
Katie. Well, you know, she's the designer and she did all kinds of shows with John Sex. Her and John Sex were really close and they would do shows together and she would sing country western and then they would dress up in their beautiful country western looking.
Outfits that she
Yeah.
made,
Right,
yeah, and then
and,
she did like fashion shows, like.
Yeah, she had fashion shows. She did kooky stuff too, like in Club 57, like performances with other people. And like she was, you know, one of the regulars, you know, and we still see each other now, you know, we still hang out and stuff, so it's cool. That's great though, I'll have to tell her. Yeah. I can't, specific show, you know, I mean, she just did all kinds of things, right?
I love she did like a brunch fashion show at Marion's on the Bowery. That was a really fun place. And they used to do like, you know, events on Sundays
Right.
with their brunch. And I remember she did like this a really just beautiful fashion show stuff. This is before she moved to Nashville and started actually making clothes for performers there. But she just had that country western, you know, glamour thing down.
Yeah.
She's just so good.
She also was kind of friends with some of those like high-end burlesque types, like sometimes she would like Kitten Navidad, for instance. Like
Oh,
I
yeah,
have a
yeah.
really good picture of her.
She brought her
You know,
to Danceteria, I forget
Oh,
what
the
she
Club
did.
57, I have a picture of
There
her.
she is there on the left.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's her.
with Holly.
But that's what Holly
Yeah,
on, right? And
yeah,
that's from that
and-
play, right? That's from the Sound of Music.
Was that one from Sound of Music?
Yeah, that was the
Yeah.
one Hollywood was in. Right. Well, that's great. Nice to meet you, though. That's really cool.
Any other yes?
So first, I want to say thank you, because I think what you've done, these are stories that deserve to be immortalized, and the fact that you now have your books and your photographs, I think it's just precious. They're nothing short of breathtaking. My question would be, aside, you touched on it earlier where you said the lack of focus on profit, the lack of competition. Like what, can you talk more about the spirit of that time? What could have created such creativity, such originality? I'm trying to understand, because right now, this era, you're talking the 70s and 80s, seem to be a constant reference, what people would call iconic. And I'm trying to pinpoint what exactly was it in the air
Well, I
that
think,
could have nurtured that?
right, I think that,
As a follow-up, just do you think there's a chance of history ever repeating itself?
No.
I think because it's too expensive here, at least in New York, maybe like in other cities though, like I don't know, Detroit maybe, but I think that the low rents made the biggest difference because you could do whatever you wanted, you know, and I think that it was a period of time that we were coming out of, you know, most of the people were like raised in the 50s and 60s, you know, so that, and hadn't really found, like all of us, I feel like we finally found our, kind of like our place, like our high school in a way. Like, we didn't maybe go to high school reunions, but we had this. I think we were all kind of coming from a lot of suburban places and looking for some meaning in life. And because the rents were so cheap and everybody always wants to live in New York City, you know, some of them were from other, California, whatever, but I think we just kind of found each other and had like a real bond with each other. You know, I think we're just looking for a place to fit in. And the creative stuff just came from the support of each other, I think, too.
The proximity to Stonewall as well, the 70s. It was essentially the first generation of modern gay liberation,
Right.
having lived through it myself.
No, of course. So this was already like 1980, and these were people getting out of, some of them
Yeah,
were pretty young,
almost
getting
all
out of
the
high
70s,
schools and
yeah.
college and,
I think I just want to add, it's also pre-internet, pre-cell phones, so
Yes.
everyone is present.
even
Never
answering
runs.
machines. We didn't even have answering machines
Yeah,
in the
you
beginning.
made a call to a friend, you made a
Yeah.
call to
No,
a friend
it's
to
true.
say,
There
go to
wasn't
Club
even an
57,
answering
you had to go,
machine.
you couldn't cancel.
Right,
So,
right. No, it's true. That, I think that has made a huge difference.
yeah,
And people couldn't find their, love life online either.
right.
So if you're gonna meet somebody, you're gonna have to go out.
Everything's happening in real time.
I met my future husband in the middle of the dance floor at the Roxy.
Okay.
24 years later, I think I'm living proof that magic does happen.
Well, us too. Same thing.
Any other questions? Yes.
For Mark, so after researching all these places, looking at all the pictures, hearing the memories, if you had a time machine, which club would you want to go back to, and what show would you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, like, I've been asked this before and it's so hard to pick because I really want to go to all of them. But I mean, I think one we didn't talk on about from the 80s and the 70s was Paradise Garage, which was, this incredibly important, bigger club, mostly catered to, Black and brown folks, and, was most famous for its DJ, Larry Levan, who kind of was just really changed nightclubs and music. So the way people talk about that dance floor is just like, can never be recreated. And I do go, they have a reunion party every year I go to, so it's like the closest I'll ever get, but it's not the same. So I think that's like my go-to answer. And Keith Haring was a regular there too, so
Absolutely.
it all
It's his favorite
connects.
place.
Yeah,
When Keith would come to Club 57, I never, like, of all the different people, I just, he's just a sweet, shy, unpretentious person. Like, I never imagined that he would become like the most famous of really the whole club, I think.
Yeah.
You just, I don't know, I was just surprised when I read his book. You probably read that book that just came out, which is great, by the way. I've never, he's jet setting all over the world. I mean, but when you meet him, he's just like, even when he was famous, you couldn't even tell this guy was famous. And I had a birthday party on the roof, and he was already famous, but I really didn't know that he was so famous. And he came up to the party, walked up the 6 flights of stairs, and brought me a little painting. And we were friends, but we weren't like best friends or anything like that. But that's just how he was. He gave every single person in Club 57 got something from him. He's just the most generous person. He would give anything to anybody, really.
I hope you kept it.
We just sold them. We just did the last 2 years. It was just sitting in the house, it was fine.
Didn't want to have something worth a lot of money in our apartment.
Yeah, it was time, it was just, I didn't even want to leave it out,
Plus,
because
we're
I
old.
didn't want it to fade. It wasn't like one of those paintings where you get $1 million, I can tell you that was a small pot of drawing in plastic, but it was a good experience selling it too, it was really nice. I mean, the people that we dealt with and how the whole thing went through was great. It's funny.
Great. Any other questions? Oh, one more.
Do you have a space or a club that you would say is closest to this weird New York that you just talked about that exists in real life today?
Probably in Brooklyn.
Club that is, can you
That's just
clarify your question, like
like-
that's,
Where can we relive this right now?
where can we relive this?
People always ask that, by the way, it's like, that's the New York I wanted to see.
House of
Yeah,
Yes.
House
Yeah.
of Yes is a good one.
Yeah, those are fun.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some clubs in New York, certainly they are in Europe, like are starting to, make you put your phone away or check your phone or put
That's good.
stickers on your camera. So I think that changes the dynamic, and so I hope we see more of that.
I think the Parkside Lounge is pretty fun.
But it's mostly
You know.
bands, I think. It's
No, but in the front,
Yeah.
and they have
Yeah.
different shows, different things happen
It's a
there.
fun, yeah.
Some nights at Alan Cummings Club.
Oh, yes.
That's true,
Right.
right. Because there's a lot of really, well, actually, I mean, there really is a lot going on, and it's kind of more about the particular performers at this point, I think, more than the club itself. So, I think that's probably the way to see like fun shows and like Murray Hill does shows, you know what I mean, or like,
Coming, that was space in Eastern Bloc.
Yes,
Yeah,
among other clubs.
Maybe Red Eye.
yeah, I mean, there's people our age who are like, oh, the clubs, there's nothing happening with
but
such,
there
but
is, yeah.
clubs are not catering for a 67-year-old, old dykes, you know, they're just not, so if, but we can, I mean, we can go. There's not like there's nothing happening, there are things happening, but, you know, we're not 20 anymore, so hey. I like to go out at like 7 and be home by 12, sorry.
10.
Sometimes clubs can be people's living rooms, they just turn them in.
That's right. I think if you look, you know, there's something for everyone today. Sometimes you have to look harder, but they're there.
No, I mean, there's a lot going
Yeah,
on, really.
there's
It's
a lot.
just, you know what it is, I guess just, I think it's probably mostly in Brooklyn though. I don't think there's a lot going on in Manhattan that I know of. I mean, there may be, but I haven't found it. So when my friends do shows like a Christmas show or whatever, you know, then I would go to that, or, you know, it's more based on certain people that I already know what they do, I think, these days. You know, as far as shows go. I wish I could say they're everywhere. You know, I do, because people say that all the time. They say, "Oh, that's the New York I want to see," you know. But you know, I don't know what to say about that.
But I'll also say, we thought we missed out on, you know, the Velvet Underground playing on St. Mark's Place, and like, oh, we missed it, we came here too late. Everyone thinks they missed it, but they didn't miss it, because whatever's happening now is their thing, you know, it's their scene. And later they'll look back on it and go, yeah, that was really great.
Yeah, I agree with that. I already missed, you know, 10 years ago now. So
Right.
it changes,
I mean,
yes.
I have to say, and especially the way things are going these days, I feel kind of lucky to be born when I was, because I don't know what the future's gonna hold for a lot of younger, especially younger people these days, you know? So I feel really lucky in a way. I mean, nobody wants to get old necessarily, but at the same time, I guess if you had to be born at a certain time, I feel lucky that it's my right
Well,
time.
that was like when during World War II, London had great clubs during the
True.
bombings. I
Yeah.
mean, people were really having fun.
True.
And it was all in the dark, and you were having sex with everybody. The bombs were going off all over the city.
Right. Wow, that's really
He
wild.
said it was a great time.
So I think the moral of the story is you can have a good time if you look for it and it's there.
I do have a good time, I just want to have that good time.
It's not possible, you have to have a good time today, yeah.
Plus, everything's so expensive now, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Marc and Andy will be up here to sign books.
Okay.
They're for sale at the back, and thank you so much for coming.
Okay. Oh, you.
What's?
No. Yes, I know. She's the